Welcome to episode 21 of PokeClass. States are fast approaching with only around 3 weeks for the first one to begin in the UK. Lots of talk is happening around the Pokemon forums and community about what to run, what to tech against, and what to expect when states are finally in full swing. I would say that these are the first 32k rated events available to the UK, but in Europe there was another important event which held its high point status, the European Challenge Cup. States will be the first chance for Americans to grab those high points, but players from all over Europe attended the European Cup last weekend to get an all-important boost of points, as well as a good look at the current format before we hit States. These results have been very interesting and have posed some important things to think about when considering what to run for States. This week's episode is going to be all about the European Cup, including top decks, players, and how the UK's own players got on. There wasn't really any news in the TCG world, so I thought I'd just skip this and get straight to the good stuff. February the 19th and 20th brought us the European Challenge Cup, formerly known as the Benelux Cup, and it was very interesting indeed. Over 190 masters from all over Europe participated in the event, which was a huge turnout including a variety of great players. The UK had a few players going for the title, including Tom Hall, Carl Blake and Ben Armstead. In Masters, there was a top 32 cut and Carl Blake managed to battle his way to an eventual 18th place with his LuxChomp build. This shot him straight to the top of the UK rankings, and even though Tom Hall came 51st, he still went 5-3, bumping him straight up to second. Well done to all the UK players at the event, including Ben Armstead, who achieved 49th. When the cup eventually reached the final match, Stephen M managed to topple Andrea with his teched out LuxChomp build. This is yet another win for LuxChomp in another big tournament, so that hasn't really changed. What has changed is the amount of decks showing promise and giving LuxChomp a run for its money. The most interesting news from a competitive perspective was that Andrea, the player placing second, was running Lostgar. Lostgar has been the biggest talking point of pretty much all the states' news, with people questioning how well it will actually do. Well, here's your answer in a nutshell. It came second in Europe. I must admit that I thought Lostgar wouldn't live up to the hype, but this build has shaken up the format by taking a different approach to the Lostgar build everyone has been going by. With Lostgar doing so well in Europe, it poses a substantial threat to the metagame for states and may make people think twice about anticipating its attendance. Andrea took a different approach to the Lostgar list than many players have tried. A lot of us had thought that Gengar needs to be fast enough to outspeed SP and others, but he went the other way and decided to slow down the opponent to help Lostgar to keep up. He paired 2 Gengar Prime with a Gengar from Stormfront and the level X. The 2 Prime were for the initial lost zoning of Pokemon, and the Stormfront Gengar was for taking prizes in Top Cut and Sudden Death. This was a really clever play, as the rest of his deck focused on the traditional Vilegar strategy in lock-in trainers. So instead of running a speed engine behind Gengar, he ran it with Spiritomb and Vileplume to lock down the opponent while he set up multiple hurls into darkness. He cleverly covered for Gengar Prime's biggest weakness, taking prizes in Top Cut and Sudden Death. With a full Gengar Prime line, there is no way that you'll be able to win when it comes to playing to time, as there just isn't enough to stop your opponent taking prizes while you lost zone 6 Pokemon. So adding in a Stormfront Gengar when paired with Vileplume allowed Andrea to take prizes with Poltergeist while locking his opponent's trainers, meaning he could keep up with the prize exchange. What's even more interesting is that this list could have easily taken the European title according to his report. This section from his report tells us that he forgot to level down his opponent's Uxie level X, which took the last prize from him the next turn. In his own words, this was a misplay which cost him the tournament, so I wouldn't take the second place too lightly. This tournament has shown yet another variant of Lostgar, which has finally proven itself to work very well. I'm kind of glad that this tournament proved me wrong about Lostgar, as it clearly is a deck that can work well. With many developments of deck lists floating around the internet, this one seems to be the one to play at the moment. If the format is too fast, then slowing it down seems to be a good strategy for now. Before I move on, reports on the gym show that Steven's winning LuxChomp was playing Roserade GL, Twins and Weavile G. This shows that he specifically teched against Gengar variants, and it clearly worked, but Andrea's Lostgar gave it a very decent challenge. This deck was just one of the interesting outcomes of the tournament, so let's have a look at the top 32 decks from Masters. As you can see, there are some creative decks in here, even though over half of them were LuxChomp. Two that really catch the eye are Magnezone Regirock and Gyarados with Exeggutor. Morton, the Magnezone player, actually went 8-0 in Swiss, which is incredible for a road deck. Let's have a quick closer look at it. Morton's deck was very well thought out, with the main focus of sending energy to the Lost Zone to do high amounts of damage with Magnezone's Lost Burn attack. Lost Burn does 50 damage times the number of energy attached to your Pokemon that you send to the Lost Zone. Being able to fuel this attack with energy from any of your Pokemon is where Regirock comes in. Regirock's power, Regicycle, allows you to discard 2 cards from your hand and then attach a fighting energy from your discard to Regirock. I believe that Morton played 2 of these, which meant even more energy was being attached per turn. When you've discarded all those cards, you can use Magnezone Prime's Electromagnetic Draw to refill your hand back up to 6. To power up Magnezone Prime even quicker, he also used a Stormfront Magnezone to use its super connectivity power. This allowed him to grab lightning energy from the discard pile to attach to the Prime after he initially discarded them with either Gengar or Regirock. This clever strategy meant that Magnezone could do over 150 damage per turn, knocking out pretty much every card in the format in one hit. This led him to going undefeated in Swiss, but unfortunately losing in top 32. From players' response from the tournament, there were a lot more Magnezone Prime decks than expected, and they were doing pretty well too. This opens the eyes of the format with a rogue deck doing so well, especially in one where LuxChomp dominates. Maybe it would be a deck to try out for States. The last deck I want to take a quick look at is Gyarados Exeggutor. Cedric from France plays a trainer heavy Gyarados with an Exeggutor from Legends Awakened in there as well. Playing a trainer heavy variant means it will have a tough Vilegar matchup, but where SP is the dominant deck, he was able to get a quick Gyarados in the first turn and then send up Exeggutor to make his opponent's hand 0 with Psychic Strategy. Psychic Strategy costs no energy and causes you and your opponent to switch hand sizes. With Cedric playing a trainer heavy deck means that he can burn through most of his hand and then switch it with the opponent. This means that he could take quick prizes with Tail Revenge while the opponent relied on top decks to stay in the game. Another inventive deck which worked well. Other results from the tournament showed that Machamp was doing well, coming in 3rd, Mudos in 5th and Regigigas in 6th. This European Challenge Cup has shown us the state of the format just before we hit States, and will help every player to choose what to tech against and what to run for these big tournaments. Lostgar has finally proven itself in taking on the whole of Europe and coming close to taking the title, but LuxChomp still stays dominant by having the ability to tech against most, if not every deck. Congratulations to everyone that did well and participated in the tournament. So that's all I have for you this week. I hope you learned some interesting things about new decks that have hit the format, as well as how the European Cup went last weekend. Thanks for watching this episode of PokeClass, and I'll see you next week.